Welcome back. Welcome in. This is Country Roads Confidential at earsports.com. It's Paramount Podcast. I am Mike Casazza, joined by Chris Anderson. Thursday morning, that means the football game is right around the corner. This time, West Virginia playing host to the Baylor Bears and Jake Spavital. Chris, only one of the hottest offenses in the country, taking on a defense that is still trying to figure out who it is, where it's going, and how it gets there. I think the best part about this is these are two teams that have lived multiple seasons inside of one right now, and I have no idea what to expect from either one of them, which makes this pretty interesting theater for us on Saturday.
Absolutely. And heck, you don't know what to expect from Baylor. You don't know what to expect from West Virginia. You don't know what like offensively what you're going to get from Baylor. They are, and we'll talk about it in a minute, kind of been up and down all season long. They've changed quarterbacks. They've been like people have talked about their people being people on our message board have talked about their passing game. We're going to talk about some about their running game. They're kind of got it all going. And then West Virginia, maybe there's something you want to talk about with West Virginia's quarterback situation that you've been secretly alluding to on our message board. That could change things up for West Virginia as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting matchup. Anybody who gambles on this game, other than say over under, you probably have a problem, and that's okay. We still love you. Don't worry.
I wouldn't even mess with the over under on this one either. I just it could be 80, it could be 26 too. Who knows at this point. Kind of got a feeling that Dave Aranda is going to figure out defense at some point. And it looks like Jake Spavital figured out the offense at some point. And again, just as good as anybody in the country in their 3-game winning streak, and the numbers do not lie about that. And you could say, all right, but look at who they played. Look at who they're going to play Saturday. Like West Virginia's defense has been, kind of like a booster shot for some offenses and for some players and coaches. And I don't know why you think that would altogether change here. Maybe altogether change would be West Virginia's fate on offense if we can get right into the quarterback situation, Chris. It's gearing up for Garrett Green to be the starting quarterback on Saturday. We reported at the first day of practice this week when Neil Brown said, I got to see what he can do in practice. Garrett Green was a starting quarterback in practice. That's 7-on-7. That's 11-on-11. That's drills. Nothing changed on Wednesday from what I've heard. We are recording this before we get our intel for Thursday, but if you do that on Tuesday and Wednesday, you're not experimenting on Thursday. You're putting everything to bed on Thursday. So barring any setback, which I don't know why there would be one, Garrett Green will be your starting quarterback. And he has success against Baylor in the past, but that also, I think that it gives West Virginia the easiest route to being explosive on offense. And you're going to have to do that against Baylor. It might also give you like the most opportunities to do something consistently productive on offense because Baylor just doesn't possess the ball. They play fast. They're one of the lowest time of possession teams in the country. They haven't one time of possession all year, Chris. That includes an FCS game. And if you're going to get the ball 32, 34 minutes just naturally, you want to have your best collection of players out there. And every indication right now is that Garrett Green will be the person leading that ring on the field.
I know I'm right when I'm about to say this, but I want you to try to think of a way that I might be wrong.
Oh,
West
okay.
Virginia's best offense, without a doubt, is Garrett Green, Jaheim White run kind of what read option between the two of them. Yes or no?
Yeah, I think so. I think I want to say that. I'm not sure I would say that just because there's just this weird taste in your mouth about what Green did in the first 7 games of the year. Just wasn't quite as good as last year. Wasn't as explosive as last year. The numbers say that, your eyeballs say that. However, like Markia was supposed to be the RPO quarterback and he didn't nail them all. Like the one critique from both games was that he could have given more to Jaheim White, could have made some better reads, just didn't work out very well. So I think to answer your question, yeah, because they'll probably get back to the person who's better at it, and that is the core of their offense is having a running threat at quarterback. That changed everything for them last year. Even 2 years ago, when they put Green in place of JT Daniels, and then having that that extra set of legs in the backfield, that's great because it wasn't there with Markio. And to the point, like they were playing more two back sets with Markio just to change it up a little bit and to keep the defenses a little bit more honest. I don't think you'll see that as much with Green. I'm not even sure how effective West Virginia's two back sets were. So I would think that given the way that White played against them last year and Green played against them last year, both teams will be expecting something similar this time.
Well, shall we start on that side of the ball then? Baylor's defense, West Virginia's offense, since we're already here.
Let's go. Well, yeah. How is this falling apart like it has for Baylor or Chris? Is this kind of a throwback? And I don't want to say it's when the Big 12 was running out Bolitnikoff Award winners and Heisman Trophy winners at quarterback. There were talented players on defenses, like draft picks on defense in the Big 12, but no one had a great defense. And if you look at some of these defensive rankings in the Big 12, pretty bad. Like one aspect, the entire defense, a situational thing, but it doesn't matter. Like everybody has, it seems like everybody has some sort of flaw. Certainly the opponents that West Virginia has played that we've studied, they're bad at something or they're just vulnerable at something. And Baylor is very similar. So I wonder, has Baylor slipped? Because again, that's a hard thing to imagine with Aranda. Or is this a bit where like some of these Big 12 offenses are pretty potent and they'll do damage to you?
Um, Part of me wants to believe that some of these offenses are better than people are giving them credit for. I think people don't give these Big 12 offenses the credit maybe they deserve because it doesn't come with the big time quarterback. It doesn't have the Quinn Ewers, like if Texas were in here. It doesn't have, if you go back even further, like an RG3 and a Baker Mayfield, even a Will Greer, that kind of stuff. Like it does, none of these teams have that kind of level of quarterback when you think about it. However, I do believe these offenses are efficient for the most part. I think they're multiple, um, to borrow a phrase from old friend Dana Holgerson. Uh, Although he liked to use that on the defensive front, but we use multiple on offense as well. Um,
Multiple uses.
it-
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yes, multiple. But I think that's also creating some problems because even back then with those, it was like, hey, this is the pass first, pass second, pass third team. Now these teams are approaching and attacking in multiple different ways. And I think because of that, it's the offenses are a little better than people give them credit for. So yeah, the defenses are taking a hit.
What worries you about how about this? What worries you about Baylor's defense Saturday if you're Baylor? Not if you're West Virginia, if you're Baylor. Is it something about the visitors or is it something about the home team? Because you can make an argument in either way here, I think.
I think my biggest concern, if I'm Baylor, would be the fact that they don't necessarily get pressure on the quarterback that often. They don't really get after the QB. Looking at their pressures, they rank 14th out of the 16 teams in the Big 12 and the number of pressures they've gotten so far this season. And the two teams below them, I believe it was Arizona State and TCU. Sorry, it might not be TCU. Can't remember the 16th, but whatever it was, those two teams were among the worst in all of Power Four. Like Baylor is down near the bottom. All three of these teams are. So if you're not going to pressure, say, Garrett Green at quarterback, yeah, I get it. Hey, you pressure him, then he can run more. True. But what does Garrett Green struggle with a lot of times, especially when it becomes time to make the passing game, when it comes time to make a decision between a run or a pass? Decision making. And if you rush that decision making, more trouble, easier to defeat West Virginia. But if you're not getting pressure, he's going to have time to sit back there in that pocket. He's going to have time to sit there and think, let me look at one more option before I decide to run. Let me look at two more options before I decide to run. Let me find that big hole to run through. So I think with no pressure, that's going to give Garrett Green, especially fresh off of what we believe to be another upper body injury, a little more time to think and find his way.
So drop back passer, Garrett Green, is that what you're saying?
That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there won't be as much pressure on him. So when he decides to run, he will have the opportunity to do it instead of panic mode running. And God, there's some passing things to take advantage of. We'll talk about them in a second, but you just can't go straight into 5-step drop, pure pocket passing Green. It's not it.
Let's do that. The passing game we'll talk about now. Garrett Green is back. Expect tend to be rusty. He hasn't played since he banged his head off the turf against Kansas State, and he wasn't good before that. He'd had some issues throwing to the wrong team for a couple of games, and his accuracy was slightly better than it was before. More interceptions through a fraction of the season than the entire year before. I don't know if it was an experimentation gone awry or they tried to make him more of a pure passer and less reliant on his legs to lift the offense to another level, or if it was just regression, or maybe not even regression, Chris, just steadiness. Like that's just who he is. Maybe he capped out last year and he just kept that going. You can only push the pedal to the floor. You can't put it through the floor. Either way, he's back. It's not going to be perfect. I don't think anybody would expect that. Baylor's defense, forgiving. Really, really high number of 30 and 40-yard completions. Actually 22 passes of 25 yards or more. Chris, have you seen West Virginia's defense this year?
I've seen what they call defense. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, they've allowed one fewer 25-yard pass than Baylor, and that secondary is not very good. It gets buttered and toasted quite a bit, but so does Baylor. So you're going to take aim. I'm sure that'll be an issue for Garrett Green to be mindful of here. He'll have Hudson Clement back, full participant in practice. He'll probably have more of Justin Robinson, Traylon Ray. This seems like the first time, at least in our perception, Chris, maybe not the coaches, but that they will have their most talented, most potent collection of receivers out there at once. I think you'll see Ray back in the slot. If that means Clement and Robinson split out on different sides, two or three of those guys in the field a bunch, you'll have to fit Cole Taylor in there as well. I think given what Green did on the ground against them last year, what he probably won't be able to do or won't want to do or won't be asked to do a whole lot as a runner this year, the attention that they're going to put on White and Baylor's defensive reputation as a pass defense. This just seems like a day where you could throw it or you might come in trying to throw it to see what happens.
Yeah, especially I kind of like this idea of Traylon Ray like in the slot because where Baylor's biggest weaknesses are possibly is that slot corner and the underneath routes. You go and look at some of the completion percentages and the coverage grades for some of these guys on defense, and their slot corner is Carl Williams, um, 30 of 45 for 256 yards when he's in coverage this year. Matt Jones, their starting Mike linebacker, 24 of
Hmm.
32. That is, what is that? Three of four, that's 75%,
Yes.
258 yards and three TDs. Like we talk about West Virginia's linebackers and West Virginia being soft underneath against the passing game. Yeah, Baylor's got to beat. Like Baylor's even worse. And I don't know if that means this is going to be a Cole Taylor game or if you're sliding Traylon Ray into that slot and you're attacking right up the middle, if this is a Traylon Ray game, or you try to mix it up, get some running backs out there. We saw Jaheim White kind of get in the mix a little bit. Um, I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you could attack that, but whichever way you decide to do so, it seems like Baylor is pretty soft on that is underneath to mid routes, especially over the middle.
Yeah. Ray's had an interesting season. It's not been a great year. He's been productive. I mean, not bad at all. Don't get me wrong, but you figure some of his numbers, like, oh, this guy must be rolling in, yardage and touchdowns. No, but his yards per catch, his yards per route run, which is like a PFF specialty, that's pretty revealing, I think. Um, but we thought early in the year, Chris, that this is the guy they were going to try to build things around in the passing game, and that if they were going to have Clement and Fox out there, wait a minute, Ray's an outside receiver. Who cares? Get him on the field. He can run the routes. He's one of your three best receivers. Put him there, and he put him in the slot. That was the situation at the start of the year. First three games, Chris, 99 snaps, 96 in the slot. Is he? And like even now, like he'll play in the slot sometime, and his big plays have come in the slot sometimes or in a bunch formation. Is it too sports writery, too simple to say you're not getting a whole lot out of the slot right now? Clement is back. Robinson is a visual upgrade. How about that? Over, I mean, I don't know who over, probably Fox for sure. But if you just that combination of those three, Ray, Clement, Robinson, there's something there. Is it too simple? Is it just goofy of me to say move Ray back to the slot and play Robinson more outside?
No, what happened to just getting your best players on the field? Figure,
Right.
that seems simple, and it is simple because it's right. Get your best players on the field, figure out the intricacies of that later. So I'm with you 100%. If those are your three best receivers, those are the three guys you find a way to get onto the field at the same time. Period.
Okay. Running game. Baylor is better at that than they are pass defense. And I wonder if it's because they've been ahead a bunch lately. So teams haven't been able to really run too much on them. That'll hurt your yardage totals as a pass defense. But teams haven't really run the ball terrific against them. But they also play some teams that don't run it, like Colorado, for example, too. Um, White big game last year is something similar, at least possible here, because West Virginia's coaches were, while not happy, only had 43 snaps, kept saying, yeah, White was one shake away here, one shake away there, and maybe 7 or 8 more carries away from a big day running the ball against Cincinnati.
Yeah, I certainly think it's possible. To your point, Baylor is pretty good running the ball, stopping the run. They are, as far as EPA, expected points added on run, pretty darn good. Like they are number 22 in the country on defense in that stat. They are just like West Virginia, where defensively West Virginia is number 20 in run defense in that category and 133 in pass. Baylor is number 22 and 123 respectively. So it's very similar in that regard. However, they do seem to have weaknesses, right, especially right up the middle as far as tackling is concerned, missed tackles in particular. Mike linebacker Matt Jones and free safety Devin Bobby are the two guys with the most missed tackles on the team. They both line up right up the middle. Interior lineman Jackie Marshall has one of the highest missed tackle rates on the team as well. He doesn't get as many opportunities. Um, but when he does get them, he is even worse than they are. So that's 1, 2, 3 levels of defense right up the middle, all pretty poor tacklers. So if you are going to attack, that'd be a good spot to go for it.
3 game winning streak, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and TCU, 149, 74, 104 yards rushing, and about 33 carries a game. So teams are testing them a little bit, actually more than I thought before I started speaking there. 33 carries a game is not a small number there too, but just not too productive. We're looking about 3.2 yards a carry. West Virginia wants to be better than that right there too. Do we have a CJ Donaldson conversation here, or is he just a kind of a victim of, again, low number of snaps last game? Kind of did more blocking fullback stuff, it seemed like there too, but just felt like he hasn't had that game. I don't know, Chris, yet this season, lately this season. Then again, this might not be the one for him, and it might just be White's show. But I think this offense is different certainly when both are going, but when he is able to really assert himself and kind of run through a defense and put some sort of physicality out there that everybody else kind of puffs their chest about. They are a better offense, but it's also not easy to get him touches and get him rolling like that either if it comes at the expense of other parts of the offense, namely green and white right now.
I mean, a little concerned because yeah, the productivity is just kind of gone. Carries were way down, but it's so much of what happened last week. You can just be like, man, that was just not normal. That was an abnormal performance. That was abnormal stats. Just the way West Virginia got multiple turnovers, but scored with the defense. So the offense just simply was not out there because, hey, you're like, hey, it's a 50-50 split. It didn't feel like it because Jaheim White ran so much more and had some more success. But 43 snaps, CJ Donaldson played 20 of them, and White played 26 according to PFF. So they were on the field together a couple of times, but like that's pretty close to 50-50. So you would think, hey, that's not a concern then, but you are looking for his production here and trying to figure out when and how is he going to make a difference? Because I believe, like, really, what is only it's hard to say good. Like, what's his good game? Like
Pitt.
Pitt, he was pretty good. There you go. Yeah, 19 for 79, and then I was about to say Albany, and that's it. Like, just not a whole lot. I mean, I know he scored twice against Oklahoma State, but it took him 20 carries and couldn't even get to 80 yards. So it's been a tough sledding for him, especially the last few weeks.
You're talking about 11 carries, 42 yards a game against FBS competition right now. Sure, 11 carries, not a lot. I get that. Double it, you're talking 22 carries, 85 yards. Is that what you want to see, CJ Donaldson? Like, if we're gonna do proportion stuff, I'm not sure. There's something there, but again, it might also be White's show right now too. You mentioned the pass rush for Baylor and whatever that might be. West Virginia's pass protection, they really like it, and the sacks last week were probably more on Markio for not triggering. As long as they got beat up front, and by a team that can sometimes pressure. Jared Bartlett really wasn't much of a factor. Corleone got one sack, and it was all hustle, just him running down the line of scrimmage, and Markio scrambled there too. This could be a good game for them to wall off and give their quarterback some protection. We mentioned that there's opportunities available to get long pass plays. That might be play action. That's going to require the edges, the middle, everybody holding up. Brandon Yates, knocking on wood, can snap it forward and backward again without a problem. Matchups there that concern you. There isn't a Sean Oakman or anybody like that out there that scares you right now in this defense, and they haven't really rattled passers either.
Yeah, I think as far as pass rush goes, I mean, you got to keep an eye on Steve Linton. Not again, is he otherworldly? No, but when he comes on the field, he is there to rush the passer. He leads the team in pressures. He's got 21 of them, despite the fact that he's only played about 50% of the team snaps. So he is. I I know some guys take this the wrong way, but he's kind of a specialist. Like he kind of is focused on that one part of the game. And so when he comes out there, West Virginia is one of those guys like, like when a 3-point shooter comes off the bench, like, hey, that guy averages 8 points a game, but he could make 4 or 5 threes if we don't watch him. So it's kind of the same thing with this guy as far as pass rushing. But I got somebody else on defense, Mike, want to talk about.
It's a good one.
I was gonna say he didn't. I don't know if he really has that much to do with pass rush, but he's going to be a familiar name, at least for you deep cut message board users over at Ear Sports and guys that really pay attention to the roster, and that is Keaton Thomas. If you're racking your brain, like I don't know who that is. He was on West Virginia University's football team 2 years ago. He was talked about even by Neil Brown. He came in as a walk-on out of Jacksonville, Florida. Was I think seen as somebody who could maybe participate on special teams or whatnot, but he kind of had bigger plans for himself. Left the program after I believe just one semester, went to junior college, became a junior college All-American. West Virginia tried to swoop back and bring him back to Morgantown. He said, thanks, no thanks. Had offers from all over the country and is now, according to PFF, Baylor's best overall defender. He is second on the team with tackles with 75 of them. And he had a 37-yard interception return for a touchdown. He lines up, based off what I could tell, he was originally listed as like this star linebacker, which is kind of like West Virginia Spear, but then was listed as a will linebacker in the most recent depth chart that I saw. So however you want to pigeonhole him as far as a position goes, but man, it sure would be nice to have that on the defense right now for West Virginia, would it not?
You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit.
Yeah.
Good little player right there, and a familiar name. I wonder. I don't know if it's a Keaton Thomas revenge game. I don't know if he feels that way about West Virginia, but he was on the roster just not too long ago.
Do you think they'll play the highlight video for him in between the first and second quarter?
Maybe 6'2",
Or
224. That doesn't, man, that's a little big for a spear kind of guy. So he must be a pure linebacker over there at Baylor.
anything else for the West Virginia offense here?
Uh, how about let me help transition us from offense over to defense because there's a general stat that I just kind of blew my mind. I blew my mind, but it'd be notable. West Virginia, number 5 in the country in penalties. Baylor, 116th. Average penalty yardage per game. That's a difference between like 35 and 40 yards. And I know people will be like, yeah, so whatever. That could be significant. If you're talking about swinging the field 35 to 40 yards in the course of a game. So just something to keep your tabs on, both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Watch third downs too. For whatever reason, like West Virginia was on a pretty good run, third down and like what Brown calls the end of possession downs. Let me just rattle off a couple for you here. The first 3 games were not great, 28, 20, and 21%. Then they got in a groove, 53, 60, and 69%. The last 3, Chris, 31, 43, and 27. The reason I bring that up is, we can talk about the offense for Baylor all we want, but the last 3 games, opponents are 14 for 44 on third down against them. They're getting off the field and like they're getting leads on teams and making them really work. TCU was different. They had to really rally in that game, but they make it difficult on you. And if you're going to get behind against them, 1, they can score. 2, they dominate the fourth quarter. But if you're playing catch up with them, that third down is going to be going to be a weird thing, which kind of leads me to this, Chris. We'll flip it now to the defense for West Virginia against the offense for Baylor. I think a lot of people are going to be shocked to find out how good Baylor's offense has been. But let me ask you, like, they've had a bizarre season. First of all, they played Utah in a non-conference game and gave up 17 points in the first quarter and lost that one 22-13. It was a weird score. I can't remember exactly, but just out of sorts there. Didn't have a great start, made some changes, started to make some changes after that, including putting Sawyer Robertson at a quarterback. They spent some money on DeQuan Finn to get him from the MAC, the Offensive Player of the Year, to here. That didn't work out. Beat Air Force, bad year for Air Force. They lose to Colorado in a wild game. They should have won that game. It goes to overtime on a Hail Mary. Should have won that game. They played BYU and got their doors blown off at home in the first quarter. It's 21-0 in a hurry. That game is 28-27, I think. It's something like that late in the game. They really put the pressure on BYU, and BYU almost not undefeated there. Those are the two teams at the top of the Big 12, and Baylor pre-change was right there with both of them. They get smoked by Iowa State. I don't know if that was at home or away. I think that might have been actually I can't remember there. But they get beat pretty bad, and then everything changes. They score 59 against Texas Tech, 38 against Oklahoma State. They kick a walk-off field goal last week. Again, weird season. They've made some changes, things they thought were going to work didn't, and they are not far from being a much better team, which is probably what scares people and makes the odds so erratic right now. But really and truly, one bad Big 12 game, Chris, and it was against Iowa State, which will happen, but closer to a much different season. One Hail Mary, one stop. I think BYU had a fake punt in that game to make that game kind of interesting at the end there too. This could be very different for them.
Yeah, that BYU game, I specifically remember the Colorado game because I think I wagered on that one. BYU, in a good way. I ended up on the positive on that one. BYU, I remember that one. I think I was watching it, and it was because Baylor had they were down 6 in the fourth quarter, and they had 3 different possessions where they were down 6 in the last like 10 minutes of the game and just couldn't score. Like turnover on downs, punt, interception, just the opportunity was there. And I'm with you. This team, it's college football. You can always do this. Oh, team is 3 plays away from being yada yada yada. But this team is probably one of those teams that's better than 5-4. I think if you really looked closely at it, because how many of those wins are you like, man, they really didn't deserve that win? Maybe TCU. I don't even know about that one, but there's a couple of the losses you already noted that maybe they should have had wins there. And to do that after such a rough start, yeah, I'm right there. I'm one of the ones that had to take a big L on the DeQuan Finn thing I was preseason. I was like, yeah, watch out for Baylor with Finn at quarterback. That could be a difference maker. It was. He got benched quickly, and then they got better. So made a difference there. I was surprised by how well rounded this team is.
Ooh,
And
with their
still
running back again, yeah.
yeah, and I think I told you right before we get on here, people had asked in the mailbag leading up to this, oh, look out for this, passing offense of Baylor. How is it going to be? And we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, looking, I was like, like this run offense is pretty darn good, and it's explosive too. They rank as a team number 3 in the country in rushes of 30 plus yards. And it's not just like I think Washington, yeah, Bryson Washington has 5, Dawson Pendergrass has 4. So there's no break. It's not like one guy is breaking off these huge plays and the other guy is kind of the one that breaks you down between the tackles. Both of these guys are explosive. And you still have Sawyer Robertson, who I believe has at least 1, maybe 2 of the other ones that they have so far this season. So he can kind of break one with his feet as well. So it's a well-rounded offense that they got going there in Waco with your old buddy.
My guy. Let's talk about this because I was very curious if a Finn Spavital relationship would work. I'm sure they get along fine, but it just didn't seem like Jake's type of quarterback. Robertson definitely is, right? I think that's pretty clear. And he had his moments last year. One thing that surprised me, he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the country. I think he's like number 7 in passer efficiency rating. He's put up huge numbers. Again, just a total difference maker in the 7 starts and 8 games he's had. Chris, he has over 250 yards rushing, and like 5 or 6 yards a pop, and that's going to count sacks. This guy is like an air raid quarterback who moves too. He's going to be a really tricky cover there too. Where I guess we know where he came from, but did why spend all this money on Finn when you had the answer right there, right?
Did they not believe the performance he put on against West Virginia last season? Or
It's
was
not like he wasn't bad last year, or not like
yeah.
he was bad last year. He was pretty good last year.
For those who don't recall, and you should, even though West Virginia did win the game, he was 17 of 19 passing against West Virginia's secondary. Again, the caveat that it's West Virginia's secondary needs to be in place here, but like that's hard to do against air. And he did it against West Virginia's defense. Almost pulled off the upset there towards the end of the season, 215 yards. And he ran the ball a little bit. Again, some of that it's 15 for 33, but obviously, like you noted, some sacks are in there. I think West Virginia got after him pretty good on the sacks in that game as well. So that might negate some of those numbers, but I, I, I can't blame him for Finn because I was a big proponent of that, but Robertson hasn't been bad when he's been given the opportunity.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, just the 17-4 touchdown interception. Again, he was hurt in the middle of last year, came back. I mean, he wasn't terrific before then, but you saw some promise there. You thought he was going to be a good player and went out and just like, again, you bring in a coordinator, you kind of give him the keys and let him do what he wants to do, sure. But he's been that good this series, and he's found ways to make people around him better. And I guess he's getting a lot of help from the running game. Chris, I could talk forever about this running game. It's almost 1,000 yards in the last 3 games, which is incredible. They're running it a lot. They're running it really well. Again, air raids, Babbitt, even Baylor, you're going to get an idea of a certain type of offense. This is and isn't that because they're crushing people on the ground. What's crazy though, Chris, is who's doing it. A couple of years ago, they had Richard Reese, and you're thinking, oh man, that guy is going to be, he's a freshman, all conference level player. He barely plays now. Last year, remember, he brought 2 kicks back against West Virginia. Hasn't done a whole lot this year. He's not even returning kicks this year. Last year's leading rusher was Dominic Richardson. Chris, he left the team this week. Their backup was Dawson Pendergast, who, again, fresh, and you're thinking, wow, this guy's going to be the future. Nope. Pendergast, about the same yardage, fewer opportunities this year, but Bryson Washington is in there now and is coming off a monster game with, I think, 4 touchdowns and almost 200 yards rushing. And he's a handful, too. He's a big kid, like 6 foot, maybe 210 pounds. He can really run. Where are these guys coming from? And how do they continue to get a young player and a new player in there? And also, if you're a Baylor running back, should you just automatically transfer because you're probably not going to have your job next year?
I think they get him because they look and say, "Hey, look, I know everybody wants to talk about Jake Spavital, air raid, this, yes, that. He runs the ball a lot. Like they, even when they are, I mean, they're typically finding success, but Baylor is running the ball like 40 times per game, something like that, 35, 40. Like they're not messing around. They're ready to run the ball when they have the opportunity. Um, and so I think if you could say, hey, I need somebody to carry the ball 35, 40 times a game, and I can't have one guy do that. So I need multiple running backs. You can keep turning them over anytime you want. And especially when to be fair, pretty good offensive line too. So give the big guys credit. I was trying to look for weaknesses there on Baylor's offensive line. Not many. Their left tackle kind of sucked at the beginning of the year, but I think most of that had to do with pass blocking. He got benched. They swapped him out, brought in Sydney Fugar, who has been okay. It's been better, but not a lot of weaknesses on the offensive line. They don't, have a lot of tendencies as far as where they go. They rush all the way across left to right pretty evenly. Slightly better to right tackle right in than left tackle left in, which again might be related to the change that I just noted about left tackle. But when you have, hey, multiple guys going multiple ways with no clear tendencies, you can find success and you can find lots of guys around the ball.
We talk about Robertson as a runner. Like we mentioned the yardage there. He's got 48 runs this year. Only 18 of them were scrambles. So, I mean, about half they're giving him design runs. 8 of the 48 are also sacks. So you're talking 40 runs, 18 are scrambles, 22 are carries, 317 yards as a rusher, not, again, taking away the sack yardage there, 4 touchdowns. he's part of the offense, and he looks like you think about that and you think that guy's a statue. He's not. He can really move too. He's added something to the offense, and you think about Allard. Trying to think who else. Holstein at Pitt. The quarterbacks. Daniels is kind of his own being there, but West Virginia's defense has had some problems with that before too. And you saw a reward for being aggressive last week against Cincinnati. You also saw Brendan Sorsby kind of feast on them with his running and his ability to stay in the pocket and count to, for Mississippi and say, I can get around this guy. I can get through this guy and do that. A level of concern for Robertson being a factor in the running game here.
Yeah, I mean, is this going to be Eli Holstein all over again? Like where I think he's a little more of a runner again. You noted it's a little bit more planned runs than it is flipping out after a couple reads right there. Well, West Virginia and Neil Brown noted this as well in his post-game press conference, or I believe on Monday's press conference, that they struggled with contain on the quarterback. He said that's the first time that's really happened since the Pitt game. Well, this is a bad time for that to be a problem again, with Robertson coming in as the quarterback, a rushing quarterback against West Virginia. So, yeah, if they're going to sit there and do some like power run stuff, I'm not quite as concerned. But if they're going to be doing a little bit of him slipping out on some dropbacks and doing some rollouts and stuff, that could cause some problems with West Virginia, especially if they're not getting things squared away. And maybe that leads us to the next part of the conversation here. We talked about, I just mentioned the kind of falling back into bad habits like they had against Pitt, and it happened again last week. Well, they said, hey, things kind of worked out on defense because Cincinnati's slow. Baylor's fast. Is this a problem, Mike? Is this going to be a lineup problem for West Virginia?
I mean, they got track stars like Monterey Baldwin can fly. I'm trying to think of the other receiver right now who can really go. The Cameron's the big kid who's on their punt return team. I think he's like 6 foot 220, and he can really go. I think he's number 2 in the country in punt returns. And he's 7 touchdown catches too. He gets by people a lot. He's a big body. Yeah, that would concern me because you've seen West Virginia's defense chase a lot of people this year, and they might have good coverage and a confident pass. You're running away from somebody there too. The speed would be one thing for sure. And even in the running game too, like if they get the right, like Washington's a big guy, but they have other people who can do it. Reese, if they dare to use him, but Pendergrass is a different running back, a little lower to the ground. Actually, he's probably bigger than 2, but he can go too. Like they have big guys who can run. Like never mind small scat back types or small zigzag kind of guys. They have big guys who can move. Um, yeah, it's yes, Chris. To answer your question, the fact that they can run is a concern because it's at its worst, West Virginia's defense is chasing people. That's true with almost any defense, right? You don't want to see the back of their jersey as they cross the goal line, but West Virginia's at its worst was frequent this year where whether it was covering crossing routes or trying to get somebody off a jam and chase them down the field, or just keeping plays alive when a quarterback scrambles and takes the eyes from the defensive backfield into the offensive backfield. The guy that you are with, all of a sudden, he's just free because you're thinking somewhere else. He's able to run. Yeah, that's how you make some things happen. And if you look at some of the Baylor stuff, they've made things happen outside the design of the play. That would certainly concern me there too, because they're just good at it too. And they have a good tight end as well, Chris. So and he can run a little bit as well. So that's a valid point I was going to get to as well, because this is one of those teams that Bruce Feldman loves to write about because big guys who can run, speed, 40, stuff like that. They have a lot of talent. They've recruited Texas really well. And Chris, they had like, I think outside of maybe one team last year, no, they had the most freshman snaps in the Big 12 last year. And those guys were young and they were 3-9. And they're just getting better right now. That's your concern. And maybe that's the explanation for why they're playing so well right now is that reps, practice, experience, they're starting to put it together right now.
Yeah, they're getting closer to year 3 than they are year 2. No, like, if they last year was freshman, you're towards the end of your sophomore year, you're more than halfway, or you're about halfway, I guess.
The other thing is too is
I'll
like
work on my math.
The offensive line, they've used 4 different starting lineups. I think that there's 6 teams in the country that use more. So they have they found the right thing, and is that why it's working so well running the ball right now? Trial and error, experiment, injury, whatever. They put the same one out for a couple of times. I don't think it's in a row, but like their 5 has been together a couple of times in close proximity, and here we go, almost 1,000 yards rushing in 3 games. That doesn't hide from anybody right now. Where else here? Matchup angle aspect. Where should we keep our eyeballs?
Let's talk pressure on the quarterback. So a lot of times we talk about these quarterbacks like, yeah, pressure is good. Yeah. But most of the time it's, hey, but if you bring blitzes, some of these quarterbacks know how to beat that and they can find hot reads and you need to find a way to get pressure without blitzing. Well, guess what? You can blitz Sawyer Robertson. He struggles with the blitz. Apparently, he doesn't read it quite as well as some of these other quarterbacks that we've talked about in the past few weeks. His PFF grade drops from 87.3 when he's not blitzed to 63.6 when he is blitzed. And his turnover worthy plays, which could be fumbles, bad passes, things that are, quote, turnover worthy, increases nearly threefold when he gets blitzed as opposed to not blitzed. So we'll see if Jeff Coons is ready to dive right into the blitzing coordinator category, or if they're going to kind of sit back and wait and see what happens.
You got to tackle Robertson too. If he's going to be a guy that you blitz, you got to get him. Chris, if he had 7 more carries, he would be fourth in the Big 12 in yards after contact. That counts running backs, fullbacks, anybody who's carried the ball enough time this year. He has 40. You would need 47 to qualify in the PFF rankings. Do you know who's number one and is number one, Chris?
You tell me.
Garrett Green.
All right.
Not bad, right?
There we go.
So yeah, a matchup there to watch too. Hey, would you would you change anything if you're Coons? Let's say that you go to the easel and you've got your paint and you're just like, oh, let's do some of this and this, and you're Bob Ross. Here's a happy tree, here's a mountain, here's a cloud, here's a lake, here's a bear. All right, I know what I can do now. My bear's not very good, my tree's awesome, mountain's terrific, the cloud stinks. Do you continue to paint the picture he did, or are you more focused on something? And what I'm getting at is that pressure was nice in the right spots last game. I imagine that you would prescribe the same things this game. Third and long, sure, blitz. Everybody does that. Would you send people from the secondary again? Or would you just be more consistent in your pressure? Do you think things change in that regard, or is it just more of the same? And you just play the lottery numbers. They won last time, they'll win again this time.
No, I want to see some more consistency with the pressure. I mean, again, you can't be too obvious in what you're doing. You can't, if you get red, then every team can adjust. No matter the quarterback, they will find a way to adjust, thanks to the coordinators and the coaches. But I would like to see West Virginia maybe to up the percentage, but yeah, find different ways to do it. Find different guys to bring it in. I thought Tyron Bradley did a nice job last game. I thought a lot of the guys on the defensive line did a nice job last game, but who's to say with KK Tarnu there at Spear, what about shooting him in there every once in a while? That position used to be one where they would send in a blitzer every once in a while. Haven't seen it lately, but it is one that is capable of doing that. So I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of variety, but certainly a higher percentage of pressure this week than even last, which I thought was a good amount of pressure.
Turner is a great point. Like he does get a hold of Sorsby on that fourth down interception, but that was a zero blitz, so he comes on that naturally. Does he have to be part of a zero blitz to come? Could he be the fourth or fifth rusher sometimes? Would that be an idea to do? That would be interesting. Something to watch too is, again, just keep this in mind. Baylor does a lot of formation on the sideline where you put your three receivers to the short side of the field and not the boundary, and most of the time teams are going to flip that up for you. West Virginia, when Cincinnati had 3 to the wide side of the field, would blitz the cornerback or blitz the spear because there was nobody on that side. That's harder to do when it's flipped like Baylor does. And one reason you do it, there's just more ground to cover and there's more ways to be exposed over there. But do they have a trend buster there? Do they have something? Because it kind of worked when it was open and there was nobody working about to make a bootleg or anything like that. You come around the corner and try to do it, chase down the run, maybe get the quarterback. You're going to have a similar possibility, but flip completely. Like again, the field's going to be shorter on this side and you're running from the further part. That's going to be hard. There's more space there to cover. It's a risk for sure, but maybe they'll see something like that coming there too. Anything else in the matchup here?
Nope. I got nothing else. I'm tapped out.
Odd man front again. That's a Randus thing. He's the 3-4 guy who's kind of gone hybrid and done some different things. You mentioned Keaton Thomas being that type of force for them too. So watch what happens for Brandon Yates, the blocking, all that stuff up front too, to see how it works. And how does Baylor how does Baylor try to balance itself? Does it pass to run? Does it run to pass? It's going to try to be pretty even with its offensive attack. That's what it's been. Because Chris, here's the hammer and the nail right now. Last 3 games, number 1 points per game, Baylor. Number 1 yards per game, Baylor. Number 2 yards per play, Baylor. Number 3 yards per point, Baylor. Number 1 points per fourth quarter, Baylor. They go and they keep going and they wear on you. They get points at the end of the game too. So for 3 games now, it's been pretty good. The rest of it coming off a week and got some time to study Jeff Coons and see what happened. And Jake Spavital knows his way to the locker room too, so I'm sure he won't be too uncomfortable in these surroundings. When we're done, Chris, who or what are we talking about after a 4 o'clock kickoff at Mountaineer Field?
Can I cheat and say Garrett Green?
I think it's the right answer.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is because if they win, it's because I no offense to the defense, but I don't think it's good because the defense shut Baylor down and West Virginia won a game 20-13. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be because West Virginia came out and they scored 30, 35 points, which means Garrett Green is back. He is healthy. West Virginia is moving on offense. And so I think and then it's going to be, hey, 2 more games to go. Here it is, this and that, Big 12 championship game. Here's the scenarios. You're going to have to do another abbreviated podcast breaking it all down for everybody. And then we're going to get into see, now Garrett Green's back and maybe everything's just fine with Neil Brown and this whole offense. And we're going to be talking about Garrett Green one way or the other after this game.
I mean, if I don't know, we're not going to go that far. We're not going to go that far. It's going to be that's the note for a couple of weeks now. It's definitely the note on Saturday. It'll happen. I'll throw in this one too. Home field advantage, Chris. It's a very different mood since the last time that West Virginia was here. I don't think a lot of people thought that West Virginia would go 2-0, 1-1 even at this point, but here you are. And as it had to happen, the pieces around them have fallen into place where now this month is very interesting. This game is really important too. But man, if you lose 3 home games in a row, that's rough. And that makes everybody go, fool's gold again. Fool me 7 times, shame on me. And that's going to be a hard thing that people come back for next week. And if they win, man, next week's a madhouse too. That's how thin the line is right now about what they have and what they want to do and what they ultimately can do. So, keep your eye on that because it could be pretty interesting here. So home field, one thing to lose back-to-back home games tonight against ranked teams, but now the schedule comes around, gives you another favor in this important month where all you got to do is win. 2 easier games. I'm not saying winnable, but 2 easier games. You'd think that 0-2 would not be good, and certainly 0-1 would be the start of 0-2. So maybe we'll be talking about home field. Rest of the week, Chris, take us home. What do we have?
National Signing Day happened on Wednesday, so expect some of those letters of intent to continue to roll in over the next few days up at Morgantown. Got some updates with some new offers as well on the hoops, on the football field, even some more baseball commits coming in. We'll have some preview stuff. I believe Andrew's catching up with our Baylor site. So yeah, loaded recruiting stuff going on and, your typical preview stuff for the weekend.
Sounds good. Fresh set Friday morning. By the numbers, Friday morning. Kickoff 4 p.m. How you feel about 4 p.m.? Any weddings, any family reunions or anything?
Nothing going on this weekend. I am ready for that 4 p.m. I don't love it, but kind of, yeah.
I don't love is an 8 p.m. Friday night basketball game in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Oh, not my favorite there too. Well, promise the people, Chris, that you will do a rapid reaction podcast. Can you do that right now? Will you promise?
Yes.
All right, there it is. He's on the record. Catch us then. Until next time, I'm Mike Casassa.
And I'm Chris Anderson.
We will talk to you then.